Hi, and welcome to another episode of Ask Coach Rylan. Today's topic is artificial sweeteners, and this is something that's been coming up a lot lately in the current fat loss project that I've been running. And the reason for that is because I have instructed all the participants in this fat loss project to eliminate any sort of artificial sweetener from their diet. And I get a lot of questions as to why that is, or if there are certain alternatives, such as a lot of people think Splenda is not an artificial sweetener because the marketing surrounding that says it's made from sugar, so they think it's natural, which is in fact not the case. So a lot of people are concerned as to why that is, why I recommend getting rid of it out of the diet, and also what they can use to sweeten things. Now, the reason I recommend eliminating artificial sweeteners, I think actually first of all we should talk about sugar and why sugar is so bad for your body, and if you're trying to lose body fat, why it basically puts a stake in the heart of that. Sugar triggers the hormone insulin, and insulin is a hormone that causes your body to store fat. So if you have a lot of insulin going through your system, the chances of you storing extra body fat are much greater. And in fact, if you have high levels of insulin going through your system pretty constantly, it's nearly impossible to lose any body fat at all. So that is one of the reasons why sugar needs to be eliminated. It has a number of other effects in body fat loss, but that is primarily the reason why sugar needs to be eliminated if you're trying to lose body fat. So people often think, well, if they're eliminating sugar, well, then they can get away with these calorie-free sweeteners such as acesulfame potassium, which is in almost all diet drinks, Splenda, aspartame, and sucralose, which is just Splenda's generic name. And so people think because these have no calories at all, then they can have as much of them as they want and they'll still lose body fat. And that's actually not the case at all, and it can actually be more detrimental than sugar itself. So people are moving to these artificial sweeteners in droves and thinking that they're basically getting a freebie. You know, it's sweet, tastes like sugar, and they could eat as much of it as they want and get away with it. And that's not the case. And the reason for that is because these chemicals, and that's all they are, they're chemicals, they create a toxic load to the body. When they're metabolized, they're very acidic to the system, and I'm not saying that in an acid, like a citric acid type of way or a stomach acid sort of way. It's when these things are broken down. The actual load that they create on the body is very acidic, and that is something that is toxic to the body, and the body has to deal with that, either by storage or by elimination. Now, most people don't eliminate very well. They're not eliminating through their liver, their colon, their kidneys as optimally as they should due to years of bad diet. So what happens is when you're ingesting all of these artificial sweeteners in their chemical forms, you're actually creating a load on the body that it has trouble dealing with. So if it can't excrete them readily and right away, which is almost always the case for most people, then it has to store them. And the way it stores them is in the liver and also in the fat cells. So your fat cells will actually grow and expand to take on this toxic waste, because fat cells basically turn into little storage containers. So it's not just energy to be used, it's also storage for toxic waste. So that's an important point to remember. Now, if you're trying to cut back on sugar and you're switching to artificial sweeteners, you're basically almost taking a step backwards. You're actually going to cause more of a toxic load than sugar and cause even more body fat storage. So even though there's no calories at all, it's not about calories. It's about making your body not need its body fat anymore. So just realize that it's not always about calories. Something I should mention too is that, you know, there's a lot of marketing materials out there, especially for Splenda right now. And like I said, they talk about Splenda as being okay for you because it's made from sugar. And what they actually do is they take Splenda and then they chemically add chlorine to it. And by adding chlorine to sugar, basically what starts happening is your body no longer recognizes it, doesn't see it as sugar, although it still tastes like sugar. And your body will not know what to do with it, so it tries to eliminate it. It doesn't spike your blood sugar levels, but at the same time, it actually triggers increased sugar cravings. So you're trying to get away from these sweet things. First of all, you want to try and eliminate as much of that stuff as you can, but what Splenda's doing, it's actually making you want more of it. So you're holding yourself back, and then what that usually ends up looking like is you end up eating more things with artificial sweeteners in them, creating a greater toxic load and greater body fat storage. So what do? You know, most people know now that aspartame is a no-no, and it's in fact been proven to cause all sorts of horrible diseases in lab mice and that sort of thing, but for some reason, and I won't get into the politics of it, it's still for sale. Well, I believe that in the near future it will be banned, and I think Splenda and sucrose or sucralose, sorry, and all these other artificial sweeteners will eventually be banned when the burden of proof gets to be too much. Now, what do you do? So first of all, you want to try and eliminate all these sweets out of your diet for one, and kick your sugar habit. I go through step-by-step process of how to do that in my daily detox diet at GoSleeveless.com. But basically what I want you to realize is the process is you try and eliminate basically all sugar out of your diet for a couple weeks. If you do that for at least 7 to 10 days, you'll eliminate all your sugar cravings altogether. So that's basically step one. Now step two is, what do you do when you actually need some sort of sweetness? So some people want to add a little bit of sweetener. Now honey is a better alternative than sugar because it has a lower glycemic index, so it's not going to actually convert quickly to blood sugar and cause body fat storage as much, but it is still sugar. Now, one of the things I recommend that's out there right now is something called stevia. And a lot of people have heard about stevia, and maybe you haven't, but stevia is basically an herbal extract. So it's a plant, and there's some brands called, I think there's one brand in particular that's called Sweet Leaf. It's basically just the extract of this leaf, and it's very sweet. It does have a little bit of a bitter aftertaste in some brands, and some brands have found a way to eliminate this, but this is a natural sweetener. It doesn't taste exactly like sugar, so if you're using it as a substitute for sugar in something like coffee or tea, you can tell the difference. But if you're using it in other things, like I have some people use it in their oatmeal, and some people who are trying to get over their sugar habit, who are used to putting sugar on their fruit, I have them sprinkle powdered stevia on their fruit, and that's a good alternative. So if you're putting it with something else that kind of masks that bitter aftertaste, you're fine. But there are a lot of brands that are coming out right now that don't have that aftertaste. So that's a positive thing. So stevia is one of them, and most health food stores have that now. It's becoming much more commonplace. It's completely safe. There's no toxic side effects to it at all. It's 100% natural. It doesn't have any calories, and it doesn't increase your blood sugar. So as far as an artificial sweetener goes, well, it's not artificial, it's natural, but it is a sweetener alternative. It's a sugar alternative. So check out stevia. Some other things that you should know about too are something called oligofructose, which is not nearly as common as stevia, and again it's basically a plant or fruit derived sugar that doesn't metabolize the same. So what basically happens with that one is that you're not actually causing a spike in your blood sugar. Because it's hard to find and it's not as good, I don't often recommend that one. Another thing that you might want to look into is something called agave nectar. And agave nectar actually looks like honey, and it comes in usually a squeeze bottle, and you can get it in a dark or a golden color. And agave, basically just cactus, it's an extract of that plant, and it has a very nice taste to it. It's very mild, has no bitter aftertaste. It actually does taste somewhat similar to honey, just less potent. And what it is, it's like a honey consistency, and it's a sweetener, but it doesn't spike your blood sugar rapidly. So, although it still does contain sugar, and that's one point you need to understand, is that it does contain sugar, but it does not burn quickly. So it's not going to spike your blood sugar and cause this insulin surge and that sort of thing. So you might want to look into that one as well, but again, you want to use that one sparingly. As far as stevia goes, you can use as much of it as you want, and you're perfectly fine. Agave nectar, you want to limit yourself to about a tablespoon, maybe 2 tablespoons a day at first, and then as you're weaning yourself off anything with sugar and sweetness in it. And then oligofructose, like I said, it's hard to find. If you can find it, you can use it, and it's perfectly natural and perfectly safe. But other than that, stevia is my number 1, agave nectar is my number 2, and oligofructose is the number 3. And please, 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 please eliminate artificial sweeteners like Splenda, sucralose, acyl potassium, aspartame. Get those out of your diet.